All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It is a very warm day here in Oakland. The sun is literally, it's fucking right there. I swear. The sun rose today and sat right outside my window. It is so hot in my apartment. Anyway, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about Discworld. It's time for me to read more of The Color Magic. This is going to be the 12th part of The Color Magic. It is for Christian. Thank you, Christian. You actually have the rest of this book, which I'm very excited to get to the end of this because how? Let's do it. He told them of the world of Bathis, somewhere among the stars, where the sea folk had built a number of thriving civilizations in the three large oceans that sprawled across its disk. He had been a meat man, one of the castes which earned a perilous living in large sail-powered land yachts that ventured far out to land and hunted the shoals of deer and buffalo that abounded in the storm-haunted continents. His particular yacht had been blown into uncharted lands by a freak gale. The rest of the crew had taken the yacht's little rowing trolley and had struck out for a distant lake, but Tethys, as master, had elected to remain with his vessel. The storm had carried it right over the rocky rim of the world, smashing it to matchwood in the process. "At first I fell," said Tethys, "but falling isn't so bad, you know." It's only the landing that hurts. Oh, God. "And there was nothing below me. As I fell, I saw the world spin off into space until it was lost against the stars." "What happened next?" asked Two Flower breathlessly, glancing toward the misty universe. "I froze solid," said Tethys, simply. "Fortunately, it is something my race can survive. But I thawed out occasionally when I passed near other worlds. There was one, I think it was one with what I thought was a strange ring of mountains around it that turned out to be the biggest dragon you could ever imagine, covered in snow and glaciers, and holding its tail in its mouth. Well, I came within a few leagues of that. I shot over the landscape like a comet, in fact, and then I was off again. Then there was the time I woke up and there was your world coming at me like a custard pie thrown by the Creator, and well, I landed in the sea, not far from the circumference, widdershins of Krull. All sorts of creatures would get washed up against the fence, and at the time they were looking for slaves to man the way stations, and I ended up here." He stopped and stared intently at Rincewind. "Every night I come out here and look down," he finished, "and I never jump. Courage is hard to come by here on the edge." "He fell off the Discworld and landed..." Rincewind began to crawl determinedly toward the shack. He gave a little scream as the troll picked him up, not unkindly, and set him on his feet. "Amazing," said Two Flower, and leaned farther out over the edge. "There are lots of other worlds out there." "Quite a number, I imagine," said the troll. "I suppose one could contrive some sort of, I don't know, some sort of a thing that could preserve one against the cold," said the little man thoughtfully. "Some sort of ship that one could sail over the edge and sail to far-off worlds, too. I wonder..." "Don't even think about it," moaned Rincewind. "Stop talking like that, do you hear?" "They all talk like that in Krull," said Tethys. "Oh, they do. Well, at least from what I know. Those with tongues, of course," he added. "Womp womp." "Are you awake?" Two Flower snored on. Rincewind jabbed him viciously in the ribs. "I said, are you awake?" he snarled. "Well, we've got to get out of here before this salvage fleet comes." The dishwater light of dawn oozed through the shack's one window, sloping across the piles of salvage boxes and bundles that were strewn around the interior. Two Flower grunted again and tried to burrow into the pile of furs and blankets that Tethys had given them. "Look, there's all kinds of weapons and stuff in here," said Rincewind. "He's gone out somewhere. When he comes back, we could overpower him and, well, then we can think of something. How about it?" "That doesn't sound like a very good idea," said Two Flower. "Anyhow, it's a bit ungracious, isn't it?" "Tough buns," snapped Rincewind. "Tough buns. This is a rough universe." He rummaged through the piles around the walls and selected a heavy, wavy-bladed scimitar that had probably been some pirate's pride and joy. It looked like the sort of weapon that relied as much on its weight as its edge to cause damage. He raised it awkwardly. Would he leave that sort of thing around if it could hurt him? Two Flower wondered aloud. That's a good point. Rincewind ignored him and took up a position beside the door. When it opened some 10 minutes later, he moved unhesitatingly, swinging it across the opening, and what he judged was the troll's head. The troll's head height. It swished harmlessly through nothing at all and struck the doorpost, jerking him off his feet and onto the floor. There was a sigh above him. He looked up into Tethys's face, which was shaking sadly from side to side. "It wouldn't have harmed me," said the troll, "but nevertheless, I am hurt. Deeply hurt." He reached over the wizard and jerked the sword out of the wood. With no apparent effort, he bent its blade into a circle and sent it bowling away over the rocks until it hit a stone and sprang, still spinning in a silver arc that ended in the mist forming over the rimfall. "Very deeply hurt," he concluded. He reached down beside the door and tossed a sack toward Two Flower. "It's the carcass of a deer that is just about how you humans like it, and a few lobsters, and a sea salmon. The circumference provides, he said casually. He looked hard at the tourist and then down again at Rincewind. What are you staring at? He said. It's just that, said Two Flower. Compared to last night, said Rincewind. You're so small, finished Two Flower. I see, said the troll carefully. Personal remarks now. He drew himself up to his full height, which was currently about 4 feet. Just because I'm made of water doesn't mean I'm made of wood, you know. I'm sorry, said Two Flower, climbing hastily out of the furs. You're made of dirt, said the troll. But I didn't pass comments about the things you can't help, did I? Oh, no. We can't help the way the Creator made us, that's my view. But if you must know, your moon here is rather more than powerful than the ones around my own world. The moon? Said Two Flower. I don't under... If I've got to spell it out, said the troll testily, I'm suffering from chronic tides. Oh my god. This is the best. A bell jangled in the darkness of the shack. Tethers strode across the creaking floor to the complicated devices of levers, strings, and bells that was mounted on the circumference's topmost strand where it passed through the hut. The bell rang again, and then started to clang away in an odd, jerky rhythm. For several minutes, the troll stood with his ear pressed close to it. When it stopped, he turned, slowly, and looked at them with a worried frown. You're more important than I thought, he said. You're not to wait for the salvage fleet. You're to be collected by a flyer. That's what they say in Kroll. He shrugged. And I hadn't even sent a message that you're here yet. Someone's been drinking walnut wine again. He picked up a large mallet that hung on a pillar beside the bell, and used it to tap out a brief carry-on. Carillon? Carry-on? That'll be passed from Lengthman to Lengthman, all the way back to Krull, he said. Marvelous, really, isn't it? Actually, that is pretty marvelous. But why? How do they know how? It came speeding across the sea, floating a man-length above it, but still leaving a foaming wake as whatever power that held it up smacked brutally into the water. Rincewind knew what held it up. He would be the first to admit, a coward and incompetent and not even very good at being a failure. But he was still a wizard of sorts. He knew one of the 8 great spells, and he would be claimed by death himself when he died, and he recognized really finely honed magic when he saw it. The lens skimming toward the island was perhaps 20 feet across and totally transparent. Sitting around its circumference were a large number of black-robed men, each one strapped securely to the disc by a leather harness, and each one staring down at the waves with an expression so tormented, so agonizing, that the transparent disc seemed to be ringed with gargoyles. Rincewind sighed with relief. This was such an unusual sound that it made Two Flower take his eyes off the approaching disc and turn them on him. More important, no lie, explained Rincewind. They wouldn't be wasting all that magic on a couple of potential slaves. He grinned. What is it? Said Two Flower. Hold on, my throat's very dry. Well, the disc itself would have been created by Fresnel's wonderful concentrator, said Rincewind authoritatively. That calls for many rare and unstable ingredients, such as demon's breath and so forth, and it takes at least 8 4th-grade wizards a week to envision. Then there's those wizards on it who all must be gifted hydrophobes. You mean they hate water? Said Two Flower. No, that wouldn't work, said Rincewind. Hate is an attracting force, just like love. They really loathe it. The very idea of it revolts them. A really good hydrophobe has to be trained on dehydrated water from birth. I can't. I mean, that costs I can't even deal with that idea. That costs a fortune in magic alone, but they make great weather magicians. Rain clouds just give up and go away. Sounds terrible, said the water troll behind them. And they all die young, said Rincewind, ignoring him. They just can't live with themselves. Sometimes I think a man could wander across the disc all his life and not see everything there is to see, said Two Flower. And now it seems there are lots of worlds as well. When I think I might die without seeing 100th of all there is, it makes me feel, well... He paused and then added, well, humble, I suppose. Very angry, of course. It does. The flyer halted a few yards hubward of the island, throwing up a sheet of spray. It hung there, spinning slowly. A hooded figure standing by the stubby pillar at the exact center of the lens beckoned to them. You'd better wait out, said the troll. It doesn't do to keep them waiting. It has been nice to make your acquaintance. He shook them both, wetly, by the hand. As he waited out a little way with them, the 2 nearest loathers on the lens shied away with expressions of extreme disgust. The hooded figure reached down with one hand and released a rope ladder. In its other hand it held a silver rod, which had about it the unmistakable air of something designed for killing people. Oh, God. Rincewind's first impression was reinforced when the figure raised the stick and waved it carelessly toward the shore. A section of rock vanished, leaving a small gray haze of nothingness. That's so you don't think I'm afraid to use it, said the figure. Don't think you're afraid, said Rincewind. The hooded figure snorted. We know all about you, Rincewind the magician. You are a man of great cunning and artifice. You laugh in the face of death. Literally, yes. I don't think that means what you think it means. Your affected air of craven cowardice does not fool me. It fooled Rincewind. Oh my god. He began, impaled as the nothingness sticks was turned toward him. I see you know all about me, he finished weakly, and sat down heavily on the slippery surface. He and Two Flower, under instructions from the hooded commander, strapped themselves down to the rings set in the transparent disc. If you make the merest suggestion of weaving a spell, said the darkness under the hood, you die. Third quadrant reconcile, ninth quadrant redouble, forward all! Wall of water shot into the air behind Rincewind, and the disc jerked suddenly. The dreadful presence of the sea troll had probably concentrated the hydrophobe's minds wonderfully, because it then rose at a very steep angle and didn't begin level flight until it was a dozen fathoms above the waves. Rincewind glanced down through the transparent surface and wished he hadn't. Well, off again then, said Two Flower cheerfully. Cheerfully! Cheerfully! He turned and waved at the troll, now no more than a speck on the edge of the world. Rincewind glared at him. Doesn't anything ever worry you? He asked. We're still alive, aren't we? Asked Two Flower. And you yourself said they wouldn't be going to all this trouble if we were just going to be slaves. I expect Tethys was exaggerating. I expect it's all a misunderstanding. I expect we'll be sent home. After we've seen Krull, of course, and I must say it all sounds fascinating. This man's outlook on life is amazing. Oh, yes, said Rincewind in a hollow voice. Fascinating. He was thinking, I've seen excitement and I've seen boredom, and boredom was best. Had either of them happened to look down at that moment, they would have noticed a strange V-shaped wave surging through the water far below them, its apex pointing directly at Tethys' island. Oh no. But they weren't looking. The 24 hydrophobic magicians were looking, but to them it was just another piece of dreadfulness, not really any different from the liquid horror around it. They were probably right. What has happened? No, I don't want anything to happen to Tethys. Sometime before all this, the blazing pirate ship had hissed under the waves and started the long, slow slide toward the distant ooze. It was more distant than average, because directly under the stricken keel was the Gorana Trench, a chasm in the disk's surface that was so black, so deep, and so reputedly evil that even the krakens went there fearfully and in pairs. In pairs! Because you need a buddy system for going in trenches. In less reputedly evil chasms, the fish went about with natural lights on their heads. That's too funny. And on the whole managed quite well. In Gorana, they left them unlit, and insofar as it was possible for something without legs to creep, they crept. They tended to bump into things, too. Horrible things. The water on the ship turned from green to purple, from purple to black, from black to a darkness so complete that blackness itself seemed merely gray by comparison. This man's way of descripting is too much. Terry Pratchett just... Most of its timbers had already been crushed into splinters under the intense pressure. It spiraled past groves of nightmare polyps and drifting forests of seaweed, which glowed with faint, diseased colors. Things brushed it briefly with soft, cold tentacles as they darted away into the freezing silence. Something rose up from the murk and ate it in one mouthful. Some time later, the islanders on a little rimward atoll were amazed to find, washed in their little local lagoon, the wave-rocked corpse of a hideous sea monster, all beaks, eyes, and tentacles. They were further astonished at its size, since it was rather larger than their village, but their surprise was tiny compared to the huge, stricken expression on the face of the dead monster, which appeared to have been trampled to death. Somewhat farther rimward of the atoll, a couple of little boats, trolling a net for the ferocious free-swimming oysters which abounded in those seas, caught something that dragged both vessels for several miles before one captain had the presence of mind to sever the lines. But even his bewilderment was as nothing compared to that of the islanders on the last atoll in the archipelago. During the following night they were wakened by a terrific crashing and splintering noise coming from their minute jungle. When some of the bolder spirits went to investigate in the morning, they found that the trees had been smashed in a broad swath that started on the hubmost shore of the atoll and made a line of total destruction pointing precisely edgewise, littered with broken lianas, crushed bushes, and a few bewildered and angry oysters. What's happening? What the hell does that mean? I'm going to find out. Okay, I am going to make another video and then keep reading.